And what you just said is exactly why I love what I do, especially with where today's market is because we help people.
Welcome to the Real Estate Investing School podcast. I'm your host, Joe Jensen. Our guest today is Lamè Kinikini. He is the owner of Elk Ridge Management and Holdings. He owns over 100 doors and a short-term rental investment firm. He's also a husband and a father of 3. He cut his teeth in the door-to-door world, and he's got a lot of stuff to offer. I'm excited to have him on the show today. Welcome, Lamè.
Dude, Joe, thanks for having me, brother. Huge fan of the real estate school. I've been following you guys for a long time. So when I got the text to join, I was super stoked. So I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you sharing your story with us. You've been doing some large volume of work over the past few years. You've been hustling for a long time, but maybe you can just back it up. Where did it all start for you as far as like real estate as an investment tool? Where did that kind of come on your radar?
Yeah, love it. I love this question simply because I love sharing my story because I think it's I try and share it as much as I can just because I want people to know that like I'm not special. I'm
Yeah.
like you, and my story will probably resonate with a lot of people. And that's that for a long time of my life, I was good at my per se 9 to 5, right? Which was door to door to me. It's not really a 9 to 5. It kind of is in some ways, right? I've been doing that for years. I was with Vivint for about 6 years. And you make good income there, couple sixes. It's a comfortable lifestyle, but just like everybody else, I think you get to a point where you just want more. And we always hear these stories of real estate, of passive income, right? And passive income ain't a real thing, but but like you hear these kind of trigger words that make you want to think bigger and go bigger. And my story started when I just decided to kind of take a jump and be like, look, I could stay in this capacity my whole life, or I can start to dabble in things. And so I bought my first investment property in 2018. I bought it just on a normal traditional FHA loan, primary residence, lived in it for 12 months and then moved out. I didn't know it was going to be a short-term rental until it was. And a lot of that was out of laziness because I told my wife, I was like, I do not want to move furniture.
Yeah,
So
just leave it. It all fits.
Exactly. So I was like, hey, let me just freaking, let's try out this Airbnb thing, right? So, and it's funny because I still have that listing on my profile, mostly because it kind of is like a started from the bottom, now we're here type of moment, right? Because it's garbage. It's trash. Like amenities, SEOs, design. I mean, compared to what I know now, it's nothing good. And so, but even then, I made money. Right? My whole goal at the beginning was like, hey, if I could break even and this mortgage not be a liability, that will be a win.
Yeah,
I
you
remember
get to
my
keep
first.
the house and buy another one as opposed to
Exactly.
selling it like most people do, which is most people's biggest mistakes.
Exactly. Right. And so I was going to kind of do that. And long story short, after the first month of it being live, I made about $2,000 net. And
You're
so,
like, what?
yeah, I was like, well, this is an opportunity. And so, but really, I still wasn't at a point to where I jumped, right? I kind of wanted to do it passively. So I did. I started to kind of dive deep into education, specifically in short-term rentals. And that's really the beginning of a management company. So Elk Ridge Management originally back then started as just a property management company specifically for short-term rentals.
Oh, cool. And you're based out of Utah, right?
Yeah, based out of Utah. And so Elk Ridge is, there's an Elk Ridge, Utah here, which is the city my wife's from.
Oh, okay.
And I met my wife because when I got home from my mission, my family moved right next door to her. So our logo is 2 next doors. So
Oh, nice.
that's kind of the origin story of Elk Ridge
Little
Management.
love note right there. I love that.
Exactly. And so, but we started our management company. I got really, really good at really how to operate. And I didn't realize how valuable that would become as I started to kind of step into the acquisition space. So in 2021, we found this thing called creative finance. As you know, the umbrella term of seller finance, lease to own, subject to, deed for contract, all these different acquisition strategies that a lot of people don't know about. We got excited about this because we had this huge cash flowing management company. And really, we were like, well, where do we put our money if we want to start owning? And so, fast forward to today, over the course of the last 3 years, really, we've purchased over 100 doors. Our portfolio has kind of switched to where now we own most of what we manage, although we still manage a decent amount. And so, but that's how it all started, and that's where we're at today. And I feel blessed. So,
I love that. I love that you own the properties you manage, because it's like you might as well, like, that's where the real wealth is going to be grown, because you can be making awesome money from taking all these clients, and you're still, managing another 50 plus doors that you don't own. But,
correct.
for the 100 plus that you do own, it's like not only do you get all that cash flow and all that benefit, but they're actually going up in value. You know what I mean? And it's that scale that makes a big difference. Because if you own one or two or three, honestly, that can be life changing, to be honest.
100%.
But man, when you own 100, it's like when 100 properties all go up just 10,000 each, which isn't, I mean, that's like pretty low in appreciation. You just
Yep.
made $1 million. It's like, oh,
Exactly.
okay, you know what I mean? Then
Yep.
they go up 20,000, you made another $1 million. So when you have
Mhm.
that scale, it's like, and not to mention the tax write-offs, the depreciation on 100 properties, like, good luck even having to pay taxes. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like, it's so
Exactly.
awesome when you can get at that scale. And a lot of people might be listening to this and it's like, oh, well, I'm never going to own 100. It's like, it might not be as far off as they think, because you got your
Absolutely.
first primary turned into a house hack short-term thing just in 2018. You haven't been
Yep.
doing this 20 years. You know what
Yep.
I mean?
Yep.
um
And I love that, because I'll chime in, because that's why I love telling my story, is because I remember when I bought my door in 2018, the first thought was, how the hell do people own 100 doors? Right? Because I
yeah.
was just like, holy, because we're 1099ers, as as independent contractors, as salesmen.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this game of writing off all of your expenses for low tax liability, but then you shoot yourself in your foot, because then you have no income to show.
Right.
Right. And so,
You can't go qualify for conventional loans.
exactly. And that's why in my head, I was like, how the hell do people do this? Right. And so, as I started to kind of build what is now Elk Ridge Management, those were some of the questions that naturally I just had, because of where I was brought up in terms of like, how do I buy a property without any taxes, without any of my own money, without having season money, all the riffraff, DTI, all that stuff in traditional. And a lot of people don't know that there are ways, right? And granted, they're not easy by any means. Like, nothing that's worth anything is easy. However, it is very simple, right?
Mm,
And so it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of commitment to like learning the game, learning and understanding real estate, which is a very hard thing to do. However, it is a lot simpler than you think, right? And it's crazy, because in certain capacities, like door to door, I tell this all the time to my wife. I'm like, to this day, the hardest thing I've ever done in my life was knock doors. It's crazy. It's like
that or
this.
trying to get kids down on bedtime, it's, our tough
Uh,
stuff.
facts. But really, the point being, and this is like a life principle, is like the capacity that you're in right now, you have no idea that there are skills you're developing there that will serve you a lot better in some other capacity, that is going to make you more money. It's going to be easier than you
100%.
realize. And it's not as difficult because of what you've been prepared for. Right. And so, because my door to door, I owe a lot of what I've built to my ability to communicate, which
Yeah.
directly came from door to door for so long, right?
When door to
So,
door teaches you how to grind so hard, like, I remember thinking, like, when I first started my real estate career, I'm like, dude, if I just put in half the effort that I did on the doors to like just really being that committed, because it's the level of commitment that a full summer takes where you're just all in, if I'm
100%.
like, dude, if I did half that with real estate, I'll figure it out for sure. And the problem, like you
Exactly.
said, is honestly, it doesn't take as much effort as the door to door. And so, like, most people don't even accomplish near what they could. And I know I didn't either, because I was able to accomplish what I needed with way less time, way less energy, way less
Yep.
effort than what it took me to do it on the doors. And instead of
Absolutely.
making six figures one summer and then have to put all that effort in again, I was able to put all that effort in one year and then make six figures every year, because of the effort
100%.
from that 1 year. And it's that infinite return that
Yep.
real estate is like, oh, like that's what I love so much about real estate. I'm not worried about, it's cool to make some big bucks, but having an infinite return, it's not passive income, but it's residual and it's infinite because it'll just keep coming and coming and coming and coming and coming.
Exactly.
That's what's
Yep.
so powerful. But Lame, but how'd you get to 100? Like, how'd
Yeah.
you do it then, right? You didn't go out and do 100 house hacks, right? How did you scale? Because 2019, you probably still only had one door, maybe
Yeah.
two. You moved and
Yeah.
bought your second, right? Like, where
Yeah.
did the scaling begin, and how did you get to 100?
So the scaling came, there's two things that I figured out, right? And it's crazy to me that these things aren't taught in schools, like legitimately, because these are the things that these are strategies that I think make the most sense. But the first thing that I learned and came across was somebody I consider a mentor, Pace Morby, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the whole creative finance thing. And granted, and we could do a whole podcast on what creative finance is,
Sure.
but
We probably
in a
should have you back
nutshell,
and just dive it deep into that. But
yeah. Well, and just in a nutshell, right? Tip of the iceberg is it is an acquisition strategy that allows you to buy real estate without having to go through all of the hoops that you normally would, right? We just bought we're getting ready to close on a 10plex in Ogden. And for this $1 million property, the terms are I'm putting 15% down, which is 5% cheaper if I were to buy it traditionally.
yeah,
And we have a
or 20% cheaper. I mean, some of these investment loans want 30% down, 25, like you're getting way better.
Well, and then the huge thing with that is my interest rate is 4% flat. That's half of what market is right now, right?
Yeah,
And I was able to do that without I didn't they didn't run my credit. They didn't ask for any taxes. They asked for a little bit of financials just to show that I was a responsible adult, right? Responsible business. But
sure.
outside of that, I didn't really I found out about this property 3 weeks ago. We're closing on Friday,
That's
right?
awesome.
And so like this is a real deal that like and it's not like you're not looking for a needle in the haystack. They're all over, especially in a market that's hurting like today, right? And so first and foremost, to answer your original question, how did I scale? I figured out an acquisition strategy that allowed me to buy quickly, buy multiple, right? And my best month was in 2022. The end of that year in December, we bought 18 doors,
Mm,
right? And so all in 1 month, all creatively, right? And so, and if you were to, it's almost impossible to do that traditionally. It's almost nearly impossible,
yeah.
unless you have a ton of money and all these other things, right? But that was the first thing I figured out. The second thing that is also a huge opportunity that, to be honest, I feel like I just got lucky in the market cycle of the economy, is really capital markets, other people's money. There is layers to capital markets. You have family offices, you have banks, you have all these other ways of leveraging money. And then there's a retail space of capital markets. There's a lot of grandmas, sisters, uncles that have, not just family members, friends, coworkers, old high school people that really just have these nest eggs that are sitting a lot of times in investment accounts that are doing nothing for them,
Yeah.
right? And so, I mean, the greatest cardinal sin in W-2 is promising people that like a retirement, like a 401k would retire you. I can't tell
Yeah.
you how many people come to me and they're getting ready to retire after a 30-year career, and all they have is maybe a couple sixes, 500 grand or less. Like that is so common, and it's tragic because it's
Yeah.
like you got 30 years left to live. You ain't living off 500,000 for the next 20 years, 20, 30
Mhm.
years, right? And so
Especially with the rate of inflation and things like that. It's like there's just not
exactly.
like good luck, you know what I mean?
Exactly. And so the capital markets really, so on my deals, like I have a lot of capital partners. I just have a lot of people that have brought me money to allow me to go and execute on this deal. And we're just JVing on these deals, right?
That's awesome.
Granted, where I've been able to scale and create this opportunity for myself is learning how to short-term rental and learning how to buy, right?
Mm,
And so I like to call it CASTR, which is creative acquisitions into short-term rentals. That's kind of the methodology in which we've scaled so quickly. But those are the two, and honestly, I think those are two separate like categories that I think anybody could create a business off of. like being able to just help people place money in assets that are making them greater returns than these traditional accounts they have, but then also the creative side of being able to buy properties and cash flow them and buy them in a way that you can do it at scale. So those are, to answer your question directly, those are the two levers that we kind of figured out. And I like to consider myself really proficient in those categories that have allowed us to scale really fast. So
And I love that, like, I love the focus of your buy box and your strategy, I guess I should say. The focus of your strategy, you even coined it CASTR, right? CASTR, because it's the creative acquiring of STRs, of short-term rentals. And it's like when you've branded this, you've coined this strategy, but it's that focus that I think is so powerful for you, that a lot of people, they get so distracted. There's so many ways to make money. There's so many options. Well, should I do this or should I do that? Should I do this? Or that? And then they never get deep enough. What do they say? Like, it's better to go a mile deep in the right thing than an inch deep on 100 different things,
100%.
And
Yep.
that's what happens. What I see in real estate a lot. People get a little bit deep in a lot of different things, but never really get the momentum. But if you can go a mile deep on creative acquiring STRs, boom, like that's Lamè's thing. That's Elk
Yep.
Ridge's thing. And so you're able to really, get proficient at it, because there are
Yep.
nuances. You say it's like it's not easy, but it's simple. It's also not that simple. Like once you start getting into the details of ST of creative finance stuff, like they call
Yeah.
it creative for a reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot
Yeah.
of
That's true.
nuances that once
Yep.
you know them, it actually does feel pretty simple. You're like, okay, it's not that bad. You just do this, do that, and this is how you do the insurance. This is how you do that. But before you know it, it's like, well, how do I do the insurance? Well, how do I do? What about like if the notes call due, or what about like the ownership,
Yep.
or how do I access the bank account? Like like there's all these little things like, well, what if they declare bankruptcy, and what about that? Like all these little questions that you're able to get deep enough to know all that, be proficient at it, so that when you do bring in partners, they don't have to spend a year figuring that out the hard way. They just go, oh, I'll just invest with Lamè, and he's already done that.
Yep.
And then they can just rock and roll and start making a lot better returns than they're making in their crappy 401ks.
Exactly. And it's funny, you bring up a good point that I think a lot of people, this is where they get analysis paralysis, is when people are wanting to jump into real estate. The hardest thing about it is there's a blessing and a curse, and that is that there's a million ways to make $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
And I recognized that early, and it's easy to get like shiny object syndrome, and that's why a lot of people go an inch in 1,000 different things, when
Yep.
really, if you can go deep enough, like that's where I think the real money is found, in the niches. And so for me, when I started to go deep, I also started to find that it took a lot more work, took a lot more study. I had to really put in the time to consider myself like an actual expert. But like once I was there, competition was like there isn't any,
Yeah.
right? Like granted, there's people that are doing similar things, but there's nobody that's doing CASTR. And like when I could do that, that allowed me to provide value to the people that you're talking about, right? The people that don't have the time to be able to have a career change and do everything that I did and full jump, but maybe have money and have a good income and want to be able to call themselves an investor, right?
Yeah.
And that's where like when you can be niche, you've created an opportunity for yourself. So I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. There's so much power in being really focused on one thing. And I think that's one thing, honestly, going back to the door-to-door space is, you should just go sell that thing you're selling. like that is it. There's other things you have on your to-do list, but 99% of your focus is like, go sell that thing you're selling. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's
Yeah.
very, very straightforward. And I think that's one reason why it's so powerful, though, because every day, all day long, you're just focused on doing that one very specific thing. And if you can translate that into your investing and go, okay, I'm just going to do this one thing really good and get it done and get it done and get it done and get it done. It can be really powerful.
Yeah.
And I love, so with these short-term rentals, so you're getting stuff to cash flow in Utah. So that's the hard thing. A lot of everybody's like, oh, there's no cash flow in Utah. I want to buy, but nothing's even going to be self-sufficient. It won't even cover its own debt, let alone give me any extra. Like this Ogden 10 unit, like how are you getting that to pencil where it won't be hemorrhaging money? Or is it going to hemorrhage for a few years and you have a long-term stabilization program, or what's your approach on that
Yeah.
one?
So this is where the caster as a whole has become my niche, right? Because you can get in trouble with creative.
Sure.
Like the problem with creative is like you could go and buy like there's almost like you almost take the barriers off that the banks provide you of
Yeah.
like making like rash decisions because when
Yeah.
you can buy creative you can go to any wholesaler and just buy every deal that he has and like
Yeah. You could be
actually own
buying
the
a lot
product.
of trash that's going to be
Exactly.
trouble, and no
Exactly.
guardrails to stop you.
Exactly, right. And even at a 4% interest rate, that's just a number, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that long-term rents are still going to check out, that your exit makes sense. And so that's where the whole SDR, short-term rental exit, provided an extreme value for my
Hmm.
business. Was I got, again, you got to know where I came from. I came from the management space. I came from a place where I had to perform for other people's properties for me to make money. And so
Yeah.
that forced me to be able to go super deep in like being a dog at driving occupancy. And
Mm.
so what the way that we're able to do this and the way that we're able to stay cash flow positive and the way we make every deal pencil is just relying on our ability and our expertise of running it as a short-term rental. And that when you can do that at a high level, honestly, my buy box becomes freaking massive. And it's because I now have a lot more cash flow to work with because of my ability to short term rental than most. And so the way that we underwrite all these is through that exit. There's very few doors of my entire portfolio. 90% of it is all short term rentals. And
Really?
some people would look at that and think it's crazy, but then you look at my numbers and it's like, it works, right?
You're like,
And
I'll be
so
crazy for a while, right? Like, let's
exactly.
roll with this because I think I'll come out ahead.
Exactly. And like a nugget that I'll share in this industry is that because everybody hears the noise of today that Airbnb is dead or that
Yeah.
it's dying or that it's
I
hurting,
know
right?
multiple investors that in the past year or two have all liquidated their STR portfolios
Yep.
and got
Yep.
out. They're like, oh, the short term rental, I'm out. They're like, they're all exiting it. So it's interesting hearing you go and double down on it.
Yep.
Um, that's
Well, and
interesting.
the reason for that is, and this is where our operation side really provided insane value for us. Airbnb, what it did is it made it really easy for people to think that they were operators, right? Because you can
Yes.
just post on this app that automatically gives you millions of people and eyes on your property without you having to worry about SEO, having to worry about
Hmm.
driving occupancy in different verticals. Before Airbnb, the OGs were direct booking, hoteliers. These are all the people that understand that there is a marketing game that has to be had,
It's a
right?
business. They understood there's an actual business, and that has nothing to do with real estate. It's
Exactly.
a business in and of itself. Um, and then these people get in thinking, oh, I'll do real estate, I'll do STR. And it's like, well, those are two different worlds.
Exactly.
Yeah, they really are. Now you can combine those worlds in a beautiful way, but they're different worlds, and you need to learn both if you want to play both.
Exactly. And us backing into this as an operator, right? When I was learning how to make my clients more money, because that made me more money, we
Hmm.
started to find insurance contracts. We started to find government contracts. We started to find professional contracts, right? We
Mm.
just signed an insurance contract for a young lady that had her condo flooded. And
Yep.
so the insurance broker who we've closed a few deals with called us and he's like, "Hey, I got this. I need a 2 bedroom, one bath that's fully furnished in Salt Lake." We had one, and it's actually a basement unit, and they're paying me $3,750 every 2 weeks.
Oh, gee.
Every 2 weeks for this 2 bedroom, one bath in Salt Lake, right?
And the insurance is covered.
Insurance is
And
covering it.
that's
It's
what's
not
cool, like, because
costing
you're not gonna get a person to fork that out. They're like, "Yeah, right, dude." But since
exactly
insurance is covering it, it's doable, you know?
exactly. And these insurance brokers, they just want to know, do you have the capacity? Do you have a property? Is it well maintained and well furnished? And do you have the ability to deliver on the service?
Like,
And
right
all
now,
they
we need someone today, like, this is an emergency, and that's what's so beautiful about your scaling. Again, like, people think, "Oh, it's safer if I only own 5 or 10 properties." No, it's safer to own 100 because now your
100%
options are limitless, because
hard
now
fact.
you do have a vacant one, which isn't a big deal to you, but you can put someone in it and you can do these contracts. Like, it's so much safer to go bigger than to go smaller. which
Yep.
a lot of people don't realize that. Like, oh, I don't want to get over leverage and own too many, and that's scary. It's like, dude, the more you have, you just have more pieces to play, which just gives you so much opportunity.
And you can serve people that others can't, right? If I
True.
have 5 doors, good luck getting an insurance contract. That is a needle in a haystack, right?
Mm,
But like these insurance brokers are calling me because they know that I have this mass amount of doors. But on top of that, now suddenly in this model where I'm driving different occupancy, how reliant am I on an Airbnb? They take a back seat now. Like if I get a
right.
hotel contract, I will cancel a reservation, which is the cardinal sin in that industry. But again,
Right.
it's because it's Airbnb has like it's fooled people into thinking that they're like legit operators, right?
Hmm.
Whereas like to me, Airbnb was never the mainstay. It was at one point, but like when we started to understand there's so much demand in the rental space as a whole for furnished rentals, I like now it's an abundance mindset of I need to just outwork everybody to go find it. And so I guarantee that our company is probably the leading provider of delivering on insurance contracts, hands down, simply because of
Are you just
my
in Utah? Are you nationwide, or where? How does that
so
play out?
we're primarily in Utah. We're in four
Cool.
other states, but 80% of our portfolio is here. And so
So you don't
um,
rely on Airbnb for your business. You
I
have
don't.
other ways
Now,
you're tapping into it. The
mhm.
insurance contracts. What else do you use? You mentioned a couple other ways that you're finding clients to fill these homes.
So in Utah County, Lehigh is a huge tech haven. People know
Sure,
that,
Silicon
right?
Slopes, baby.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that we've tapped into is executive assistants. So there's a
Mm,
ton of executives for all these tech companies that often fly in quarterly, bi-quarterly, sometimes monthly, and they want a consistent place to stay that isn't a hotel.
yeah,
And so we have a lot of these people that are calling us and hitting us up and they're booking direct. So automatically we're saving them 5% while we're making 10% more because we're avoiding platform fees, right?
yeah,
So professional contracts is a huge one. The other one is professional services. So we just housed a government contracted construction company to do some build out for some foundation work in Moab, and they paid me $8,000 a month for 6 months for a 5 bedroom house, right? And
wow.
so and that's a government contract, right? That's them coming in and trying to find a place to stay for people. And so and I'm telling you, like Joe, these are everywhere. They're everywhere. If anything, these I can't tell you how many government contractors like relocation specialists, insurance brokers call me and they're like, I've been looking for somebody like you for months, right? Like
Mm,
it's wild. And
that's
the
crazy.
problem is because we've gotten so lazy as operators. I don't even consider people if you're only on Airbnb, and I might ruffle some feathers saying this, I don't you're not an operator to me. like, like
Sure.
if you're only on Airbnb, like you're out there for low hanging fruit, right? Now, mind you, it's still a piece. Like I'm not
Yeah.
saying stay off it, but like there are other ways to demand the dollar with a furnished rental that people just don't they're not willing to go out there and find it, right? And
Well,
that's kind of
and
been my
it
mindset. So
differentiates. It's like having a diversified portfolio in a way where it's like you're diversified, where you're not like all your eggs are not in the Airbnb basket. Because what if they make
100%.
a stupid rule or what if they just change their policies and you're just
Yep.
destroyed overnight? Which that stuff, it will happen. It does happen. It happens regularly, Or what if they get shut down because of embezzlement or some crazy thing, and they're like, oh, I'm destroyed. You
Yeah.
don't want all your eggs in one basket. And love how you're diversified throughout. And there's VRBO and there's other ones that most people know of, but you've got to like more than even just the vacations, because that's one cool thing about what you're talking about. As I think of what if another COVID happened, half of your clients would still be doing their thing because these
Yep.
are government projects. These are
Yep.
contracts that this isn't just based on vacationers,
Yep.
which is
And
really cool because as the economy shifts, you can bend with that. But is there any room in any of this conversation for the average person who does only own two or three or four? They get their first Airbnb or a furnished building. They're like, oh, yeah, I've got a furnished home. Like I'm going to move. I'm going to leave all my furniture. what would the average person do? Is there space for them to look at more than just Airbnb, or is
I
that kind
think
of just exclusive to because of your scale?
that's a really good question. And to your point, these opportunities of different verticals of occupancy have become more available at scale for me, right?
Sure.
Because if I'm trying to find an insurance contract, it really is a needle in a haystack because it's micro location. If I only have five, like I gotta hope that because when somebody's house burns down, they don't want to live an hour away, right?
Right.
And so you gotta like hope and trust that like if somebody does burn down, you're within proximity of where their life is, right? And so it becomes a very narrow like window of opportunity if you don't have scale. With that being said, I still do think that there is a lot of benefit to the everyday operator simply because of the time and attention that they can give it delivering an experience on Airbnb. Airbnb nowadays has become it is an experience based platform.
Yeah.
Like, and that's why when you go on Airbnb, the first thing you see is all these crazy freaking homes because
Hmm.
people want to experience something. They don't want a room and a board, right? And so, like, I think the opportunity for these smaller operators is utilizing Airbnb. And because your portfolio is so small, you can just go all out on the experience, hand delivering cookies, creating, leaving custom notes, right? Like, and these are all things at scale. Like, it's not that we can't do, it's just hard to deliver, right?
Sure.
And so I think the opportunity there is there from an operational perspective. However, I think the bigger opportunity is being able to buy right, especially in today's market. Because if you're only doing Airbnb, then you need to be very wise of how you're acquiring your doors.
So let's
Because
talk
you,
about that. What does it mean to buy right?
to me, it's just, and it's not always creative, right? But in today's market, you're not going to pencil any deal at 7-8%, especially if it's a single door. You won't. Even 6%, it's very hard, especially in Utah,
Yeah.
right? And so buying right is essentially making sure that you're buying down the note. So whether you're putting more money down, which I think there's a lot of people that feel safer doing that to get a rate buy down or just to buy some of that principal down so your note is cheaper, or creative, right? In today's market, I think creative is huge because there's a lot of people that bought between 2019 and 2021 that have a 4%, sometimes sub 3% interest
Yeah.
rate. But because from 2021 to 2023, it's only gone down. So there's probably no equity there. So there's a lot of people like that where there's a good opportunity to take over somebody's payment of 4%. And when you do that, you've effectively won your cash flow back that all these other operators don't have at 7-8% notes, right? And so that's where I think the opportunity is for anybody at any scale is like just operationally knowing what you can do based on what's in front of you, but then also like being able to buy right to make sure that you're winning your cash flow back. It's crazy how many people are blown away at, me buying houses at 4%. It's crazy to me because of how many opportunities that there is. Like I get like multiple emails in my inbox daily of like these deals in Utah in the fours, right?
When it's getting
And
more and
so
more popular because like
yeah,
one, the creative finance as a whole concept, especially I think here in Utah, I know Pace is, has a lot of Utah ties and stuff like that. And
yep,
he's kind of blown that up. It's becoming more normalized. And so the sellers are getting educated on it,
yep,
because before when I would call people and ask them about this, they're like, what? I've never heard of that. I'm not, this is weird. They feel very awkward talking about it.
mm-hmm,
Nowadays, more and more I'll talk to a seller and they're like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I've heard of like, they're actually like kind of stoked. Like, can
yep,
you tell me more about that? Like, I've heard
yep,
about this. I don't know how it works. And it's like, dude, the doors are opening up literally and figuratively for this
yep,
for this wave of creative finance, which is just a win for everybody except the
yeah.
banks, maybe, but whatever.
And what you just said is exactly why I love what I do, especially with where today's market is because like we help people. Like I
Yeah.
can't tell you how many people we've been able to come up with structure a creative deal because nobody was buying. Nobody
Hmm.
could afford it. And so we came in and saved them from a foreclosure, saved
Yeah.
them from, they've been eating this cost for the last 6 months and they don't live here anymore, but it's just a liability, right? There's just so many, and that's why I love the approach of it. Because like, if I have to go buy a property cash, I have to be a shark. I have to,
Sure.
because there has to be margin there for me to do it. If I'm a flipper, I'm going buying properties at cash, I have to offer 50, 60% LTV, not because I want to be, but because that's the only way it makes sense.
Yep.
Right. But with creative, there are so many levers you can push and pull that allow you to have a very human approach about it, a very empathetic approach, which is naturally who I am, of like, hey, how can I help you? Right? Like how much equity do you have or not have in the home? What are you looking to do after this? Like, why is this a liability to
And
you?
just customize it around whatever they're trying to achieve. You're not
Exactly.
stuck in this box of like, well, the bank says this, or the flip numbers have to equal this. It's like, dude, let's just do whatever we want to do. Let's make this special between you and me.
Exactly. And that's what I love about it, is that approach allows you to approach a seller with empathy genuinely, and being able to have the conversation of like, look, Joe, I'm not here to like, negotiate you down and take every dime. I just want to help, right? Like, you tell me, where's the pain point? Do you need money today? Is the monthly killing you? Okay, let's say you need money today. Okay, Joe, I'm going to get you, let me just cash you out on your equity, right? I can do that. For it to make sense for me, what if I just took over your interest rate, which is at 3.5, right?
Yeah.
And that's the conversation that happens of give and take, that is from a very natural place. And I like to think that I've been very successful with what I've done in that regard, simply because I care.
Man.
Like, really,
And,
right?
and that's the thing, like a good salesman, as you learn, like there's like the mediocre salesman who can sell a lot because he can be like kind of scammy or whatever, but like the
Yep.
actual good salesman just learn to actually solve people's problems and give them what they truly want, and it
Yep.
be find a win-win. And then it's like it's way easier that way, because you're not twisting anybody's arm, you're not manipulating anything, you're not tricking anyone. You're like, no, I'm creative enough to find a solution that you're stoked on, and then you're
Yep.
both just like, well, great. There's no
Yep.
sales. There's no like, oh, I got to sell them on it, which I think, sounds synonymous with like trick them, and see,
Yeah.
it's like, no, I'm a
Yep.
facilitator. I'm not a salesman. Like, I
Yep.
facilitate good situations for everybody. And I can tell like that's how your approach has been. You carry that over into this, and it's like, that's a perfect match.
Yeah.
Which is cool. And just one point on the interest rate versus purchase price, right? If you're trying to say, hey, I need my numbers to hit here, 2 or 3 interest points will make a bigger difference. You're going to have to cut the purchase price in half to make a difference of 2% interest. Like, and you can, if you can show the seller that on like a spreadsheet, like, look, I could either do it at your 3.5 if I take over your loan here, and then I can do this purchase price because this is my numbers. Or if I have to go get a new loan at 8%, like, look at, I'm going to only be able to offer you 100,000 to 500,000. And they'll see, like, it's not me trying to gouge you. Those are the numbers. And they're like,
Exactly. Yep.
oh, wow. Like, you get a much bigger swing on the interest rate than the purchase price. You can only go so low on the purchase price.
100%. And
It's
again,
crazy.
it just creates a much more humanistic, natural problem solving approach that is much needed in today's market, right? Especially
Yeah.
because I mean, honestly, I think, and I don't know what your take is on the market, but I'm a little worried about this year. Like, I mean, worried for people. Like, honestly, the longer the feds take to lower the rates, the better it is for me. Because like, I'm just going to keep cashing out on deals.
Well, and
But
I don't think they're going to lower them that much. I honestly don't. I think
exactly.
we might see by the end of the year half a point, maybe.
Yep.
We'll see.
Yep.
Call me in December and tell me if I'm wrong, but you wait and see. I don't think it's going to be a big shift, and I honestly don't care. It makes no difference. And the truth is, most people that need something solved, they need it solved today, not
100%.
in a year from now. The
100%.
people you're helping, it's like, no, they need to move. They got this new job in Nebraska. Their mom died. Like, they're going through this divorce. Like, they need money for this surgery or whatever the thing is. Like, they probably need it now. You know what I mean? They can't
100%.
hold on for 6 years and see what happens,
Yep.
And so it's like, well, let's figure out a solution now. And yeah, maybe it would look different in 3 years from now, but we're not living in 3 years from now, right?
Yep.
We're
Yep.
living right now.
And that's where
Cool.
but I do think, yeah, I mean, because if interest rates stay high, it's good for business, but we're going to start seeing more and more hurt be realized, so.
Yeah, and it's interesting where people are at and what we can do with it. But it also opened a lot of doors, so you can find a lot of solutions. But I wanted to ask you, if someone's like, okay, I want to get into the short-term rental game, and I kind of want to get into your network, right? Like, oh, you've got all these contracts or this and that. Like, can I throw my asset into your network of scale where you have access to these, other government contracts, and I just don't want to run a short-term rental business because I don't want to learn that business and compete in that area.
Yeah.
Can they not give you the asset, but have you manage the asset and put it into your group? And how does that look?
100%. So it's not our mainstay focus. And so with that being said, we are very selective
Yeah.
on what property, where it's at, type, condition, especially who we're working with. Like that's
Mm.
my big thing. Because it isn't like a set it, forget it. There's still things you got to be aware
No,
of, things you
you're
got to
running a full
perform on.
business. Yeah.
Exactly. And so granted, I can take a lot of like the minute away, but at the end of the day, there's still going to be some things that as an owner, I'm going to need you to do to make sure that you perform and that the property performs and that you make money. Right. And so yes, so we do take on properties that we manage. We're selective, but if that's something that somebody watching this wants to do, just reach out to me. So
What is
happy
the
to help.
best way for people to be able to get a hold of you and your company and reach out to kind of, participate or follow or whatever?
Yeah, my Instagram's the easiest way to get a hold of me and my team. So, and that's at HAILAMEK. So it's my full name, Lamè K, on Instagram. So that's going to be the easiest way to get a hold of
Awesome.
me.
We'll put that in the show notes as well so people can just go click on it if
Cool.
they can't remember that. But yeah, man, this is awesome. I think there's so much to be said for this. I think it is kind of inspiring to see, how hard you've gone. And for those listening, I know I've kind of been like, oh man, it's so cool if you can be at scale. It's so cool if you can be at scale. It opens all these doors. But also like realize like every step of scale matters too. Going from 1 to 5 is scale. Like now you have 5 and you have a lot more moving parts. Just going from 5 to 10 is another level of scale that opens a lot of doors and removes a lot of risk and variables. Going from that 5 to 15, like every step is a big deal and opens a lot of
Yep.
doors. And honestly, lowers your risk, gives
Yep.
you more options, and makes things better. You doesn't have to be 100 right away. And you might not want to run a business. Like I personally, that's one unique thing about how I've done it is from the beginning, maybe this will change someday, but I was like, I don't want to be running a business. I don't want employees. I don't want insurance. I don't want to be running a business. A lot of people are running house flipping businesses or wholesaling businesses or property management businesses. And that's awesome. But real estate's so customizable. So someone listening might go, well, I don't want to run a business, but I could go figure out what Lame's buy box is, get him a couple and he can run that. Or I can just do it on a smaller scale and not have to run the business. Because guess what? You don't need a government contract if you only need to fill
Yep.
2 units. Just get
Yep.
the one-off rando and it's filled. And 100% of your portfolio is filled now because you only have 2 or 3. So it's like you can
100%.
get away with a lot. There's benefits both ways, even if you're not having 100 units, because you're very agile. Like
Absolutely.
say, you can be more customizable, and there's benefits both ways. So just lean into your strengths of wherever you're at, and don't forget what your ultimate goal is.
I love that. And I think what I'll add to that is, the greatest asset, the most valuable asset that we own is the asset between our ears,
Mm,
right? And I think where economies of scale, whether that scale is 1 to 5 or 1 to 100, the most valuable thing that you take from that is what you learn and what you become. And
yes.
so to me, like the guy who's able to go from 1 to 3 and change his life, that is just as valuable as Blackstone, who owns, billions of doors, right? And so to me, I think really the purpose of any good business is just the people that we serve, first and foremost, the clients you serve, the value you bring to the world, but then also the people that you develop and become, including yourself, right? And so that's where to me, really resonate with what you said is that like, you know, you're you can win with wherever you're at, and it's just a matter of just taking the next step that's going to make you a better version of yourself than yesterday. So,
I love it, man. I love it. Well, I want to run into our final 4 questions before we let you go back to
cool.
conquering the world like you're doing. But question number 1, man, what is your dream deal or a deal that you just would think would be so awesome to be able to tackle someday?
That's a really good question. I think my dream deal, honestly, is being able to purchase some commercial real estate out in the motherland, good old island of Tonga, baby. And
Okay.
so I would love to own real estate out there. It's hard because of the economy. It's still a developing country, but there are some commercial assets out there that I'd love to own, hotels, and just to be able to visit with my family and have a place that I can always house, set aside a few of those doors for anybody that needs it when they need it, right? And so that's my dream. That's my dream deal.
Okay,
So
promise me you'll give us a call when you get that first deal in Tonga. You give me a call and we'll get you back on. I want to hear all about it, okay?
yeah, 100%, 100%. You're gonna be the first call, Joe. So
Love it, man. I'm
uh,
gonna go find it for you. Now I'm invested. I'm like, I want to get in Tonga as well.
let's go.
All right, question number 2. What's been one of the most pivotal books you've ever read, or recently one you're stoked on?
That's a really good question. I'm a huge podcaster, so I'll
Mm,
be honest. I don't read too many books,
let's
but
pivot it. Let's say podcast. Which one of your go-tos?
so honestly, the bigger pockets. I mean, and that sounds super. You probably get that a lot, but
It's
really, I
powerful.
think, yeah, when I think the best thing that anybody can do for themselves is just like exposing yourself to that industry. And bigger
Hmm.
pockets does a great thing with that. That's led me to a few books that I'll mention. So it's Pace Morby's book. I've skimmed through that book, and that's super valuable. I forget. I
Wealth
think it's
Without
like no,
Money, his new
Wealth Without
one.
Money. Thank you.
Yep.
Yep. So that one has been a good resource of reference for me. And then one that like I read a few years ago that everybody always asks me what's the most valuable skill, and I think it's sales. Like I don't think I know that is the number one skill. And the Science of Selling is a book that I read. I mean, over 10 years ago, and I've read it a few times, listened to it a few times since then. That opens up an entire different perspective of what sales is. And it helps you understand that it is really a developed skill that has a science to it in terms of like being very intentional about how you communicate. And so those are kind of my three references
Who
is
is
what I'd
that?
say.
Brian Tracy? Or
I'm terrible with authors. Have
yeah,
no
I don't
clue.
know. It's called The
Yeah,
Science of Selling. It
if you
was
got the
really
picture
good.
of it, I can tell you it's that one. It's a red book, but like I
Love
don't know
it.
who wrote it. It's
Love it, man. No, I appreciate it. That's awesome.
yeah.
All right, question number 3. What is one of the most expensive or just interesting mistakes that you've made in real estate investing?
So, and this is where creative can get you in trouble. One of my very first deals, I bought a deal that I anticipated to renovate, and this actually was like it helped me like actually know my buy box because I always thought like, yeah, I'm going to do some value add. And anyways, I bought this property in Salt Lake. It's a duplex, and the original budget was 40 grand. That was like what I had thought would
For the
be a
rehab.
healthy budget. Yep, for the rehab to be able to like, and it fit right in my numbers. Cash on cash looked great, everything like that. And anyways, what I ended up spending on it was about 250 grand.
Oh,
And
shit.
so I mean, we ended up digging. This is a property that was built in 1900s. I mean, we ended up having to redo a ton of plumbing stuff, just stuff you don't see. You not even had an inspection, and so like I thought I could skirt, the renovation, and it just ended up not being a good thing. But what I will say is that it's one of the best performing short term rentals that I have, and so I haven't lost yet. The appraisal came back far less than what I spent on it total all in, but it's a waiting game in real estate. I haven't lost yet.
Well, that's what's cool about the long hold. It's like, yeah, it might be tying up more cash than I preferred, but like, let's run this thing to the ninth inning and see who's ahead, and you're
Exactly.
probably going to be ahead. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As long as you can not lose the asset, like, how are you going to lose in 20 years? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um,
Exactly.
so I
That's what I
love
love
that.
about it. So,
Yeah, yeah. Rehabs are always a tricky, crazy thing. I just got to share the story because I'm in the middle of, I just got this offer on this fourplex and we're doing some due diligence. And the contractor goes, "Oh, yeah, I know this area. All these homes now, if it's being remodeled or built in this area, are requiring a sprinkler system, like a commercial fire suppression sprinkler system. But there's no water lines that can hold that capacity on that side of the street. So you're gonna have to trench across the freeway, and it's like a $200,000 project just to add the sprinklers, and the whole property I have under contract for 181. And so I'm like, well, that's
Holy
probably not
cow.
gonna work. And I'm just like, man, if I hadn't found that out during my due diligence period, I could have been hosed, like
Yep.
could have been screwed, you
Yep.
know? So yeah, rehabs are always, you got to know what you're doing. Like when we talk a
100%.
lot about real estate, we're like, yeah, just take action, get in there, take action, get in there. Like that's true when you're just like buying something. But when it gets into
Yeah.
like rehabbing, like
Yep.
90% of the stories I hear of people actually getting burned is rehab stuff.
Yep.
Now, that's
Yep.
also the most powerful tool for people to grow crazy wealth and recycle their money and scale. So it's worth learning that game if that's what you want to do, but it's
Yeah.
it can be
Well,
a
and
tricky world out there.
serious. And likewise, I mean, what it did for me was I don't buy anything that has any more renovations needed other than like light cosmetic, which is floors and paint.
I
So
love
past
it.
that, if I see plumbing, electrical,
You're like,
roof, if I see any of that in the
we're not
inspection,
messing with
it's just,
that.
yeah, it's just not, I'm not going to touch it. So,
I love
but yeah,
that, dude. I love that. I feel
but
like that's not the norm. That's kind of been my go-to in the past. It's just more turnkey. But most people are always doing these value add stuff. And I'm like, I get a little like, oh man, there's so much value in that. That's awesome. I should do that. But it's easier
yeah,
to run the
it's not
numbers
worth
and know what you're
the
doing.
ROH, return on headache. It's not worth
Return
it.
on headache. I keep looking how to add that metric to my deal calculator, man. I'm like, where is the return on headache on this?
I
There needs
know.
to be a number for that. Well, this is great, man. Well, we'll let you go. I did want to ask you, what do you just do for, non-real estate related, just fun to enjoy life, to make the most of, this world you're building? Because, yeah, we're buying real estate, we're building lives of freedom and flexibility, but, to what end, right? So like,
Yeah.
what's the passion behind it? What do you like to do?
Yeah, I think for me, and this might be not your typical answer, but I'm at a point in my life where I'm just constantly seeking authentic relationships.
Mm,
I've built a career, and I think that's a cross that people don't realize you carry when you start to build a name and a brand that reaches a certain level. Is like there's a huge sense of lack of authenticity. People wanting things from you, this, that, the other, and I've just found like being able to really lean in onto people, like one helping people, because you get the most authentic version of somebody when you can help them and they really needed it. But then two, just leaning into the right people that that are just wanting to have a real authentic relationship. And so obviously that's narrowed my circle down to like my family and close friends, and then people that just again just want to have authentic connection. So that's kind of where I'm at in life right now. And obviously I love doing what I do, because it kind of feeds that beast. But that's kind of where my head's at nowadays and what I like to do. So
dude, I actually love that. I love that answer. I feel a common thread with one of my focuses in life right now too. It's like, because you can't buy that, right? You know what I
yep,
mean? You can make a lot of money and you
yep,
can buy a lot of cool experiences, but you know what? You can't buy authentic friendships, and it's such a powerful part of a fulfilling life is the people in your life. You know what I mean? And
yep,
and that's just something you gotta earn, you gotta work for, and you gotta like attract. You know what I mean? You can't
yep,
just go out and buy it. So I feel what you're
100%.
saying. I love that, man. Well, sweet. Well, we'll let you go. I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for being on the show, and for taking the time out to share your story with us.
Dude, Joe, thanks for having me, brother. Appreciate you. This was awesome. So have fun.
Absolutely. This is Joe Jensen signing off for the Real Estate Investing School podcast, reminding you to get creative.